There are really three kinds of stories that I want to talk about. The first is the story of self. What's my own leadership journey? Who am I? What are the early life stories that made me who I am, that built the values? Starting on that day you were born and stepped into your parents' story, how have you made choices throughout your lifetime that have led you to choose the values that you want to carry forward and stand in? Which experiences perhaps that you want to leave behind? And how do you define yourself now in who you are as an individual, as a leader? There's stories we tell ourselves about who we are, and then there's stories that we tell others about who we are. And the goal in the leader is towards congruence, where our inside stories match our outside stories and are the strong stories that we are not only telling ourselves, but comfortable to tell others, and that inform others of who we are and what we stand on. Then there's the story of everybody else in the room, because they're all bringing in a story of self. But how do you show up and elicit those stories from others such that you can begin to build connection? And as I heard from Sam, community, because that's a basic foundation and value that I know that Treehouse is founded on. And it's through telling our stories and hearing others' stories that that community can actually have a strong foundation and begin to grow into a common culture that resonates and holds everybody. So how do we ask the right kinds of questions to elicit the stories that bring out the best in everyone? And how do we listen? In fact, I often say I'm not a storyteller, I'm a story listener, because in my work as a psychologist, as an executive coach, and actually as a story consultant, I would say I listen 90% and I tell 10%. And it's through that listening and asking a few pertinent questions at the right time that I'm actually empowering others through connecting to the stories that they can stand on that bring out the best in who they are and their own potential. So there's the story of self, there's the story of other, and then there's the story of who are we together? Some would say that brand is one's company story. It's not the story that a company tells, it's the story that others tell about the company. That's what your true brand is. How do others know you, speak about you, think about you? That's your company story. What do you want others to see about who you are? What are the values you want to resonate? And how do you live the stories such that that's what people are talking about? Building the stories of self and other and how we come together is also how we begin to build the vision story. Who do we want to be together? Where do we want to go? How do we fulfill that vision through our mission and continue to have that story go in the direction that we want it to go? So on your sheet, you'll see that there is one of the graphics is 3 circles. So this is really Story 101, but I think important to think about as you stand in your stories. There is a 3-way relationship occurring whenever a story happens. There is always a teller, and a listener, and the story, or the message. Part of your leadership value is by understanding when you're a teller and when you're a listener and why. What the message is that's most important to be conveyed in this interaction and how you want to convey it. So it's becoming clear in who you are in relationship to other and what's needed in this moment. When you're the teller, you have a direct connection to the message and to the story. And your role is actually to be introducing the listener to this message in such a way that they, in fact, not only embrace it, but want it to be part of their story as well. They say that some of the strongest leaders, the biggest tool that they have is being a storyteller of when they tell it, letting other people feel like it's their story too, or they want to be a part of it, that they're on board. So it's finding the right story for this particular listener such that they feel engaged, connected, and passionate as you are about that, but also building trust in that relationship so that they're willing to follow you into that story. As the listener, your role, I think, is equally, if not more, important. It's about how am I fully present for this teller such that they feel seen and heard and empowered, and to know that I feel that their message is important and I want to understand it and see how our stories align, or how we need to grow a larger story that can hold both of us as we move forward, whether it be, again, in an individual relationship, in a team, or in a whole organization that's trying to build a culture together. As we're listening, so often what happens in dialogue is that we're thinking about our response. It's either bringing up stories or thoughts for us, and we can't wait till that other person finishes so that we can jump in and tell them what we think. Part of listening is slowing down, being fully present, and holding back some of that so you can fully take in the story of others. But also beginning to think, what stories of mine is this story stirring? What thoughts? What feelings? How am I being touched or moved by this? What actions might hearing this story elicit in me? And how can I share that back with the storyteller such that they know that they've been heard and that together we are bringing our stories together? So in the exercise that we're going to do, we're going to practice some of these things. We're going to practice a little bit of telling, a little bit of listening, and a little bit of what I call appreciations, which is this part of not what I heard, but how your story moved me, touched me, what I learned, and how it might change me by having heard it. So if you haven't been listening at all up to now, now's the time to start listening, because I'm going to be giving some directions, which I have never done for a group quite this large, but I'm totally optimistic and sure that you all have the emotional intelligence, the cognitive intelligence, and the awareness to pull this off with me.